Well, I hope you like that Celtic music, where British Israelism has its roots in the old Celtic and Druidic religions, the pagan religions of the Anglo and Saxon and Teuton regions of Europe. Nobody ever heard of the word Aryan. They were the Teutonic tribes, the Celts. They were the Gauls. They were the Druids. Until Helena Blavatsky came along and connected these tribes to a supposed Eastern race called the Aryans, supposedly the Indian, not the Indian of the United States or of the American continents, but the Indian of India, whom, ladies and gentlemen, are not white. But yet the Aryans were supposed to be a pure white race, superior to all other races, that founded, created, and nourished civilization. And none of it is true. It's a heady offering for anyone who is willing to believe it, for anyone who is so insecure within themselves that they need desperately for someone to tell them that they're worth something, worth more than anyone else, that they are elevated indeed above all other races and peoples of the earth, and that they are truly the master race who have been promised to inherit the world. Isn't that something? It's the same heady attraction of the mystery religions of Babylon, the secret societies, the so-called fraternal organizations, which hold out the promise of the revelation of a secret if you climb high enough in the degrees of initiation, a secret that makes you different from all of the men and women on this earth, that hold out the promise that you will be a member of the truly elect, the holders of this secret, the guardians, indeed, of the secrets of the ages. That you will be a part of a brotherhood that will promise you wealth and material satisfaction and will take care of you. And if you're in legal problems and you go before a judge who is also a member of this brotherhood and you give the secret sign, you will prevail against your enemies in that courtroom. And it's all true. Except for one thing. Actually, two. There is no secret except the secret of how to control others through the promise of a secret. And there are no elite. There is no superior race. Period. Period. End of subject. It is a scam, a lie. Now, on Friday night, you heard me reveal the proofs of all of this, and those proofs are undeniable. Can't even argue with them. Not for a second. All you can do, if you want to hold on to these imagined delusions of grandeur, is to dismiss them arbitrarily and continue to quote the old deceptions. And many people will do that. For some people are so ingrained in this doctrine and so established in the community of those who believe in this doctrine that for them to stand up and admit that they were wrong and to reject it outright would mean terrible consequences. They would lose most or all of their friends. They would be ostracized by the community. They would be excommunicated by the church. If they owned or operated a business, they would lose their business and their family would be put in the poorhouse or out in the street. And you all know what I'm talking about because you've all seen it happen over and over and over again. And you would be hounded and persecuted by the priests and the elders of these religions until you had to flee utterly for your very life and your very existence. And some who have found themselves in this situation have even been murdered over the years because they refuse to flee, refuse to back down, and refuse to recant the rejection. The original population of this country, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm not talking about the Native Americans who were already here. I'm talking about the immigrants from the very first. The original population of this country came from England, indeed, from this whole continent came from England, later from France. The destiny shapers of America failed to advise us, ladies and gentlemen, how in this process, if these are lost tribes that they're talking about, how in this process of crossing the Atlantic, the Ephraimites changed into children of Manasseh. How did that happen? Oh, well, some say that there were 12 original tribes of Israel, many of them lost tribes, which isn't true. The Bible substantiates that they were never lost. Never, ever, not once. But that Manasseh is the 13th. Well, if there are only 12 original tribes, where does this 13th come from? Anybody have an answer to that? Because these same people claim that the formation of the state of Israel fulfills the prophecy of all of Israel coming together again into a nation. Therefore, Manasseh cannot be the reformed tribes of Israel, whether lost or not. So what is this all about? It's about a deception of such a magnitude, ladies and gentlemen, that without even knowing it, many people who claim to be patriots and who claim to be against the New World Order are actually helping it come about through this deception of the mystery religion of Babylon and international Zionism, which have combined their forces. And folks, Zionism is not Judaism. So don't go blaming it on the Jews. Many Jews are Zionists. Many Jews are not Zionists and reject it outright. And I hope you understand that. Any time that you begin to blame one people, one race, one group for all your problems, you are fitting in to the deception of divide and conquer and destroy the weakness of that action. They have succeeded in splitting this country into so many groups, so many religions, so many organizations, so many this, so many that. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you really want to know the truth, there is very little of America as it has ever been known to be left, if any at all. And there's going to be an ultimate conflict, whether it be peaceful or with the force of arms, depends upon how many people we are able to awaken in order to form a political consensus that will take the hands out of these manipulating power grabbers so that they have to drop the power into our hands and let us restore freedom to all peoples. There is, of course, a great deal more, and it's extremely interesting study, an interesting talk, conversation, if you can converse with someone who is intelligent enough to be able to converse, rather than argue dogma but it is all founded upon the same arbitrary method, ladies and gentlemen, and all of this pseudo-exegesis is backed up by equally precarious tradition, formed simply by taking a verse and making it fit somewhere. Or if you can't make that verse fit somewhere, you take a historical event and find the verse that will fit it, taken out of context and without any attention to any other verse, tracts, chapters, whatever. So beginning with Esdras in his second book in the Apocrypha, we know that, quote, "The 10 tribes took this counsel among themselves that they should leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country, that there they might keep their law which they had never kept in their own land. And they passed by the way of the Euphrates." End quote. This is confirmed, folks, by Josephus, who wrote AD 70, quote, "The 10 tribes are now beyond the Euphrates and are an immense multitude." End quote. What became of them? 10 tribes? Well, according to these British Israelites, there were 12 tribes. But when you're talking about the 12 tribes, then Manasseh becoming the 13th, what you're doing is really recounting the story of the zodiac and the sun, the 12 houses and the sun, the 12 disciples and Jesus. The same old story throughout the history of the world. British Israelites claim they have the answer. Past old gravestones in the Crimea and a town on the Danube near the Black Sea called Isaka, quote, "evidently an Israelitish name," end quote. Evidently? What do you mean evidently? Prove it! And they can't. They trace these tribes to Scandinavia and to Western Europe. The Saxons, having come from the Black Sea, captured England from the original Britons and divided the country into sections whose names all remind us of God's promise. In Isaac shall thy seed be called, Genesis chapter 21, verse 12. For they are Sussex or South Saxon, Essex or East Saxon, Middlesex, etc. And this is all what they say. It's not really what happened in history. There is an Irish tradition that the prophet Jeremiah escaped from Egypt with a daughter of Zedekiah, the last, and by the way, illegally appointed king of Judah. These two first reached Spain and later Ireland. They say, here this female descendant of David, entitled to David's throne only by favor of Nebuchadnezzar, married an Irish tribal chief or king between BC 580 and 565. From then on, the line of David is continued, first in Ireland, then in Scotland, and England. And at the same time, they have this other story, that Joseph of Arimathea have this other story that says the same thing with different names. That Joseph of Arimathea took Mary of Magdalene, who was really, according to this story, the wife of Jesus, and her children, the children of Jesus, to Scotland and Ireland. And from there arose the Merovingian line of kings, descended from the house of David, because Jesus, as the Bible says, was a descendant of the house of David. And so his progeny would also be. Think about that. How in the world did they get people to believe all of this? For there is no truth at all for any of it, ladies and gentlemen. This feat, however, was by no means the only accomplishment of the aged prophet Jeremiah. We're talking about the first story here. He also succeeded in taking with him the stone of destiny. This is the stone I've talked to you about from the beginning. All through the mystery schools, we've talked about this stone. The Queen of England sits upon the stone, which rests beneath her throne. He succeeded in taking with him the stone of destiny. It should be borne in mind, namely, that Jacob, when departing from Bethel, had taken with him the stone which he had used for a pillow as a token of the divine presence, and on his deathbed had referred to it when, according to Genesis chapter 49, verse 24, he had said concerning Joseph, "From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel." This same stone went with the Israelites into the wilderness. Paul referred to it in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 4. The rock followed them. But just look that up in its context and you'll see it does not mean what they say it means. And can you remember in the New Testament, Jesus said, "Upon this rock I found my church"? Same stone, and he wasn't talking about Peter. And I know that many of you don't understand. According to the British Israelists, Jeremiah then took this stone with him, and it became the coronation stone of the kings of Argyle, then of the kings of Scotland, and until recently of the kings of England. But you see, this is not an unbroken line of ancestry. This is a line of conquest. The stone did not pass through these hands. The stone that they're talking about in real history, not the history of the deception that the British Israelists teach, but real history, the stone did not pass through these hands by blood, but by conquest. So that the hands in whom this stone now rests is in no way related to the house of David, no matter how they may falsify their lineage. And believe me, so many lineages of bloodlines are falsified today to connect somebody with someone whom they were never related to under any circumstances, and to bloodlines and through history that cannot even prove the existence of the people whom they claim they are related to. For instance, there is no historical proof whatsoever, other than the Bible says so, that a king named David ever lived upon the face of this earth. Recently, they found a rock somewhere on the side of a building that they dug up in an archaeological excavation, which had the name David carved on it, and they are now saying that that is the proof that King David was real. But it's not. It's just a rock with the name David carved on it. How many Davids do you think there have been throughout history? And what do you... well. I could go off into all kinds of little things, but let's not do that. This stone rested in Westminster Abbey. Small wonder the removal of this stone of Scone in December the 25th, 1950, caused so much consternation. You see, because today they claim that this Jacob's pillar is now the stone of Scone. There's about as much historical evidence for all of this as there is for the alleged story which claims that there is among Roman Catholic relics the stone upon which the rooster stood when he crowed at Peter's denial of his Lord. or for that matter, for the feather that dropped from the wing of the angel Gabriel when he announced the Savior's birth to Mary. Much after the same fashion, ladies and gentlemen, great things were expected some years ago from the then Prince of Wales, one of whose name was David, and who reached the age of 30 years in 1924, would duplicate his ancestor, the original King David, and bring the world together and fulfill the prophecy with him sitting upon the throne. But Prince David, meanwhile, having become King Edward VIII, abdicated from the throne of Judah and Israel, British, in favor of the woman he loved. That's his exact words, quote, "the woman I love," end quote. And the Duchess of Windsor proved a spoke in the wheels of Anglo-Israeli exegesis. You can't look within the narrow confines of this brief 2 nights into various other angles of the strange theory which is said before boasts at least 2 million adherents worldwide, such as the fact that anthropological and racial studies and comparisons have refuted the British Israel assertions concerning the racial peculiarities of the English and British as thoroughly as those of the Mormons that the American Indians are the Lamanite seed of Jacob. It's all false, all a lie. And many people believe it, and that's why they call it religion. And I'm going to tell you right now that all religious beliefs are based upon an article of faith which cannot be proven to anyone, period. Many of them can be disproven, but none of them can be proven at all. If they could, it would be called science and not religion. So somewhere along the line, someone has convinced people to believe these things, and they have found it in their best interest to do so. And I find no fault with this. If they are going to church and doing good works and contributing their efforts to helping other people and truly worshiping their God, whoever they happens to be. But when they set out to become superior than the rest of us and enslave the rest of us in a new world totalitarian socialist order, that is where the line must be drawn, and these deceptions must be exposed, because no longer are they harmless, no longer are they exercising their right to practice their own religious beliefs protected by the Constitution, but they are then infringing upon the rights protected by the Constitution and given to us by God of every other person upon the face of this earth. And that, ladies and gentlemen, cannot be allowed, at least by me. So again, I want to reiterate that by this little expose of Friday night and tonight, I'm not attempting to destroy your religion or tell you that you cannot worship that religion or that you should not worship that religion, but to reveal to you the deceptions that are practiced upon all of us by the priesthood, by the powers that be, the secret societies, forces within governments, in order to make us believe in certain things that will ensure our own enslavement. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you that all major organized religions today are involved in this deception. I don't care what you call that religion. I don't care what part of the world that religion exists at. I don't care who belongs to it. It is true. It is absolutely true. In Jesus' day, he would have called these manipulators, these deceivers, and these liars Pharisees. And he would have called this secret hidden power, the secret government, if you will, the Sanhedrin. For in those days, that was truly the power behind the throne. The power which the king dared not go against. Well, we can take calls until the end of the hour if you'd like. The number is 520-333-4578. That's 520-333-4578. While we're waiting, I'm going to give you the new address for the Research Center, for Veritas, for the Hour of the Time, for all of us, as a matter of fact. It's Harvest. If you're writing to Veritas, write to Veritas in care of Harvest, Harvest. P.O. Box 1970. That's P.O. Box 1970. Eager, spelled E-A-G-A-R. That's Eager, spelled E-A-G-A-R, Arizona, 85925. Once again, the zip is 85925. The entire address is whoever you're writing to. If you're writing to me, it's William Cooper in care of Harvest. If you're writing to the Intelligence Service, it's the Intelligence Service in care of Harvest. If you have a question about an order, write to Annie in care of Harvest. If you're 20333 and you can't talk about Veritas on any other number that I'm
Kathy O'Brien and that Maxwell